Hello, you beautiful infinite beings brought into your path of exploring the infinite. Thank you for tuning in today's video in which I'm going to be speaking about turning your life around. So, how can we turn our lives around? How can we change our lives to match our dream lives, to have the lifestyles we aspire to align with our greater purposes and truth? And I'd like to start this topic with a very meaningful quote by Albert Einstein, and it goes like, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And I'm sure many of you would have heard this before many times, and this is because it's a very relevant, it's a very meaningful statement. And the reason I'm choosing to say it now is because it's all about change. It basically tells you that you need to change, that you have to change something in order for something else to change, in order for the reaction to change. Every action has got a reaction, and a different action would have a different reaction. Basically, it could be as simple as that, although it's not really. I was just saying, it's never direct, it's never a linear process. The first thing that comes to mind is habits. To actually enforce any kind of change is habit, and that could be in a general way or in a more specific form. And what I mean by that is to change your routine, change your habits, commit to something and follow up with it. Commit to a daily act of kindness, commit to waking up early, commit to eating healthy, commit to anything, and just make it a habit and go on with it, follow up to the end with it. And by that, what you're doing is that first, you're energetically aligning yourself with change. Second, you're aligning yourself with you're aligning yourself with taking control of your life rather than being just an automated puppet that is a byproduct of what life is enforcing on it. And that even second, it takes you out of that mentality that life is being enforced on you, and rather you're doing life your way. You're choosing to wake up early, you're choosing to eat healthy, you're choosing to go for that run, to exercise, to do yoga, to meditate for 10 minutes every day, to read a book to read 1 hour per day, and so on. And what this does is that it will implement change in any form of your life, in any particular aspect of your life. If you're not being particular with what habit or what commitment you're doing, and you're just doing it for the concept of change, once you change these things about your life, it's gonna change in other reactive things. Other things are gonna react differently. Life is gonna react differently to whatever you do differently. Now, if you want to make it more specific, let's say envision your dream life, imagine your dream life, and then imagine what it's gonna be like. Imagine how you're gonna be like. Imagine what it's gonna take you to be living that dream life. For example, if your dream life includes something as living on a farm, then perhaps growing your own food, living a sustainable life, then maybe you will have to wake up early. You'll need to attend to your farm, to your crops, to your garden early, because that's what's best. And so you start waking up early, even though you might not have this kind of life just yet, but you commit to waking up early with the intention of aligning with that kind of life. And then find something else. Imagine what else is going to be different. You're going to feel light, you're going to be working out around the garden, just by going around and tending and to your plants, to your taking care of your garden, your farm, And so this takes what? Exercise. So commit yourself to exercise, stretch out, even just for a few moments, with the intention of aligning with that kind of life. And so eventually what you're doing is that you're saying that I'm ready, and I know I can make the change. I've done it because I'm doing it. And so what happens is that it turns out that life gives you just that. And there's, just by committing to something and following up all the way to it, and you've seen me, if you've seen my previous videos, then you've heard me speak about this over and over, about commitment and how to get over darkness maybe, and how to attract, in topics about attractions and manifestations. I've spoken about commitment and habit a few times before in this channel. And by just forming any kinds of habits that you intentionally do, rather than just being on autopilot, and just being responsive and reactive to whatever it's offered by you. Whenever something bad happens, you feel sad and you just cower in fear and sadness, and rather than doing something different, than changing what's normal. This is the normal, this is the comfort zone, what we call as a comfort zone, is just being reactive to what life has to offer to us. And so by taking that change, I'm gonna get much deeper into this specific point for the major key point that I'd like to discuss in this video. But for now, just by doing this thing, there's actually a very nice theory in psychology that I've once researched. It's one of the behavioral change models. Actually, there's a few, or plenty of several of those models, in which they theoretically propose, and evidently and even empirically they suggest how you can change a certain behavior. So these are good. You can search for models of change, and you're gonna find quite a few of them, and you can read about them. They're very interesting. But one of a particular interest to me, this one is called the social cognitive theory, and it states that one of its statement, or actually a statement that it insinuates through discussion and explanation, is that humans, in order for us humans to develop, to evolve mentally, in order for us to grow mentally, at some point we need, or as a continuous process, we need to know that we're able of achieving things, of actually deciding on something and following up all the way to the end with it. And by that we know that we're capable of doing things, of achieving things. You have to go through a series of these things, of knowing that you're able to do something that you've said you're gonna do. You're able to keep your own promises, your promises to yourself. And that just normally, it just naturally, it evolves, because what it does energetically now is that it first, it makes you confident, and on a psychological level, it makes you know that everything is possible. Oh, I just need to put in this amount of work, or just to put in some kind of effort and to commit to something, and I can achieve it. So it makes you more motivated to go on living, and it makes you know that you're able of doing whatever you set your mind to. In contrast to what, for example, imagine, that's why, for example, we always feel defeated. If we go through a series of failures, we're defeated, we're unmotivated to do anything, we're reluctant to even pursue our own dreams, to follow on with our purpose. If we let failure get the best of us. But healthily, and the best decision is to fail and to get up again, to fail and to get up again, because that's life. Life is gonna hit you at some point or another, and we need to accept that, and to know that it's a completely natural process, and adapt to it. I've spoken about that actually just in my last video about trauma. If you're interested, I might keep a link somewhere up here, or you can check my previous videos. And while I'm at this, If you enjoy watching my videos, please consider liking and the videos and subscribing to my channel. It helps. And what it does energetically is that it tells your heart, it implements in your energetic field that you are doing things, that you are a creator, that you are a producer rather than a consumer, that you're doing things and you make things, you make decisions and you follow up with them rather than falling out midway every time over and over. And what that does is that it makes the universe reacts to you in a way that whatever you want, it's being done, and that's how you manifest things. This is one way, and I've spoken about this in more details in my attraction and manifestation video just a few days ago. Moving on to the major point of the whole reason I said this quote and I'm talking about change is changing patterns. And what I mean by patterns is those cyclic loops you go through over and over, maybe every few months, perhaps every few years. But it's these patterns that you can think of, that you can think back of and realize that you've been going through over and over. For example, what happens here, how these patterns form, for example, is that I also have a specific video on patterns, actually, one of the first videos, on how to break the patterns. But here, basically, what we're trying to do is to break the pattern to turn our lives around in this specific field. For example, if you decide to quit your job because it's been toxic and I'm gonna mention a few examples, maybe all interrelated. You want to quit your job, or you want to break up this toxic relationship, or you want to start your own business, start as a beginning to your pursuing your dream life. So when you want to quit your job, for example, a form of pattern, it's an frequent one that often occurs, is that you decide, you start thinking about it realistically and intentionally, and then right before you take this step, you find yourself tested. Now, how does this test occur? It could be a few things or many things, but for the sake of this example, let's go with you might find yourself falling back into a comfort zone, or something very rewarding that you're reluctant to rejecting this kind of thing. For example, getting a raise. Every time you wanna quit your job, you find you get a little bit of raise. Or no, I'm gonna go with a different pattern, and that is you find yourself being in risk of losing your house. You find yourself being in a very bad financial state. Every time you decide to quit your job and you almost get to that point, you find yourself being in a financially very challenging state. And then you start acting on survival, and you start acting on fear. And what happens? You fall back right into the known, the comfort zone. You decide, oh no, that's probably a stupid idea. Why did I even think to quit my job? It's very stable, it's very safe being here, it's very comfortable, it's giving me a somewhat luxurious lifestyle that I can keep up I can keep up with. And so oftentimes we go back into to the beginning of that cycle. And once we go back there, what happens? We go back to our misery. A few months go by and we're excited that we're safe and everything is good financially and we're stable. And then we get back to our misery, to our discomfort, and this is what pattern is. You get discomfort, and it keeps building up, and then it gets to a state where you can't take this anymore, and you decide to act upon your discomfort, and then suddenly something happens, and now this discomfort becomes a comfort. And this is the test, because what really is happening here is that your higher self knowing that the next step for you demands a few extra traits that you have not ever taken on before in your life. New things, you want to start a new phase. Let's say you're quitting your job and you're moving to a new country, to a new city, or to a new country. And then what happens when you do this, that you have to be reinforced in a certain way. You have to be able to face certain challenges, because this sacrifice you're doing, it comes with challenges. But for whatever reason you're doing that, to follow your purpose, to follow your heart, to follow your truth, it's the meaning, it's the higher meaning about it, it's the bigger picture that you're following here. And you know, in the end it's going to be rewarding, but through this journey there are going to be some crippling events. There could be some very challenging things that you've never experienced before, and to do that, that's what you go through here. Your higher being, your infinite being, and trying to, in your game, to trying to raise your energetic fortitude, your energetic frequency, and to actually be in alignment with what you're aiming for. It takes you through a certain challenge. You know, maybe even your loved ones come, you know, you're reminded with all your warm moments in this city, and you know, with your colleagues in this kind of job, and you know, all of the fun times you've spent, and you find yourself feeling more and more reluctant to taking that step that you've been thinking of for so long, and finally got, you know, the courage to go through with it. And now, how do you know if it's a pattern? Is that if you don't take up the challenge the first time, it's gonna happen again. You're gonna start getting these feelings again, and then you're gonna be discomfortable, and then it's gonna reach to a point where you can't take it anymore, and you wanna act upon it, and then again you're challenged, but this challenge is gonna be completely different or exactly the same. You never know. And then what you choose to do here is to remain in your comfort zone, is to take the familiar, to take the known, to stay in the known, rather than going and exploring the amazing unknown. I don't know, when did we ever get conditioned to this? It's part of safety and stability, and it surely does boosts our ego's survival. Somewhere along the way it had to have developed. But anyway, so this is what happens, and you know, you're reminded by all these, and it becomes harder and harder to take. You know, it feels very stressful to take this step, to get out, to, you know, to just. And what happens, you'll find yourself, you go through a dark period, you know, because now you're very undecided, you're going through a dilemma, and you don't know. And you know, if you let it cripples you, then, and you know, it just takes you back, and you fall back into, you know, the same toxic relationship, or the same toxic limiting job that you've been living, or in this resourceless city you've been living in, you know, for whatever reason. If you fall back out, then you're probably not ready for what is to come for you if you take that step. And that's why you need to go through this discomfort and express trust, express love, take that leap of faith to align yourself with what's coming for you, because you're gonna be faced with all of these uncomfortable moments moving forward if you choose to follow your heart, your dream. And that's why, to be, in a sense, to deserve that, you need to go through that and take the hard decision. And you know, you're doing the right thing, probably oftentimes, is because you're doing what feels unknown, what's uncomfortable for you. If you're taking just the thing that's very, very straightforward, that, you know, that what feels familiar, then you're probably mad to expect some kind of change to happen. And that's why insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a change. Always follow your heart, your deep intuition. Try to remember the bigger picture. Remember your greater purpose. Remember what even got you here? Why are you even at this point? Why did you ever decide to take this decision? And remember, while having these, what I just said in mind, you will be able to actually track it down, to trace it, to know that, oh, what I'm trying to achieve is going to pose me with these challenges. And now I'm faced with possibly a similar challenge that I need to overcome. So if I do this, I'm gonna prove energetically that I'm gonna vibrate energetically on the same frequency of that thing, and that's how I achieve it. Change is always there, presented to you, if only you decide to take it on. And just trust more, love more, and always know that your dream is attainable, and you just need to align energetically and take a few steps that we feel is too much, is too effortful, but it actually is. We just make all of this construct in our minds, to our ego let us do all of this in our mind to keep us in the familiar and in what's comfortable. And with that, I'll leave you to it. I hope you enjoyed and you learned something out of this. And if you did, please don't forget to like and subscribe, because I'm all about this.